Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video. Sim Update 6 is here for PC and Xbox versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator. There's some good news and disappointing news, let's say, in regards to the Hotas One. I'll go through that in this video. So I'll tell you what, let me not keep you waiting. Let's get on with the video. Okay, so let's get the disappointing news out of the way first. I think that's best, then we can go on to the good news. So if you go to options and control options and make sure that you got your Hotas selected here, so it should be white, and you go to sensitivity. Now I've just set sensitivities and I restarted the simulator and all my sensitivities are still not saving. I had a sneaking suspicion when they released the update notes. They mentioned about the mapping. They didn't mention a thing about the sensitivities with the Hotas One. I mean, how difficult could this have been to put them in as well? I'm vastly disappointed by this. I'm going to show you a quick way I set it. And this is the way I set it when I do my live streams and goodness knows what. So let's go to my pitch axis here. And I'll just do this quickly. Whenever I jump in, it's just a quick way of doing it. I set my minus and plus in my pitch axis. So move your joystick up and down. It's axis free. I set them both to minus 50%. And look how quick it takes me. Or look how quickly I can do this. So minus 50% on both. And in the aileron axis, I just do the same thing. Left and right aileron axis. Minus 50, so your sensitivity minus and sensitivity plus in your aileron, your left and right movement of your joystick. I just put them both to minus 50. There, bingo, done. It took me a few seconds. Twist axis, rudder. It should have took them a few seconds, really, to patch this in. I still can't believe it's not patched in. So disappointing, but never mind. Rudder axis. So when you twist your joystick, or your Hotas, in my case, I just put them to minus 30. Minus and plus. It's just a quick and easy way of doing it. And I've done this over my last few live streams that I've done. I typically play on my Xbox when doing my live streams. Bingo, done. That's how quick it is a Sobo. Look. Very quick. It's a shame these are not mapped. I would have liked to play around with others. A quick and easy method I just showed you. Minus 50 in the aileron pitch. Up and down, left and right movement. And then minus 30 on your rudders. And I don't mess with anything else. Done. Apply and save. So if I jump into a flight, it takes me a few seconds to do that. And I'll actually link my last live stream I did. And I was using those sensitivity settings, so they do work well. Let me bring it back up on screen. You can copy that. If you don't like it, you can change a couple of things, even add a bit of dead zone. But remember, we have to do this every time we restart Microsoft Flight Simulator. Very disappointing, but I just showed you a quick and dirty way of getting your sensitivity settings in if you want to do it this way. So there you go. Let's now move on to my button assignments, which are slightly different. Okay, so let's move on to the mapping and my button assignments that I currently got set up. Like I said, they're slightly different, and this is where the good news lies in terms of the recent update and the Hotas One. Let's go to my camera menu. So if you've got all these closed, just click. Select camera, press A. I'm using the Xbox Series S gamepad. Go into cockpit camera, press A there. Now reset cockpit view. I've got that set up. That's not changed. I've kept it to F2, which is the strike button on the back of your joystick part, your flight stick on your Hotas. It's that strike button there. If you look at the actual mapping, it's correct now. It's not showing F1 like it was before, I believe. Everything was showing F1. It's actually showing the correct assignment, F2. So that's brilliant. Now, some people prefer smooth panning around their cockpit. So when you move your hat switch left, right, up or down, it will smooth pan around your cockpit view. I prefer this setup. If I click my hat switch down, your hat switch is next to your F2, your stripe key here. I'm sure you all know this. If I click it down, I go down to my instruments. Now, in the instruments, while I'm down there, if I move my hat switch left or right, it will cycle between the instruments. It's particularly handy if you're cycling between your G1000s in something like the Cessna 172. It means I can cycle between the two G1000s. So I prefer it this way. If I move my hat switch up when I'm down in my instruments, it'll put me back to my cockpit view. So very useful. Hat switch left and right whilst in the cockpit, it will take me to a quick view left and right. As you can see there, cockpit quick view right, cockpit quick view left. I've just set them to my hat switch left and right. So if you want to copy that, if you want to try that, I'll leave that up on screen for you. So you can find these assignments and set your hat switch like this. And then we go to external camera. I do have this smoothly panning around my aircraft. Again, I've got F2 to reset my external view in case it becomes out of sync somehow. I just press the F2 button. It will reset the external view. And then if I move my hat switch up, right, left, down, it will pan around the aircraft. I'll link my video I showed of how to do this. Things may have changed since this last update on how you set them up, but you can still set them up the way I showed you in the video. I hope. Do let me know if you're trying to set them up, but I believe you can. Let's close the cockpit camera. So that's my camera settings. Let's now go to flight control services, because these are slightly different. Now, my rudders, like I said, is on my twist axis. I'm twisting my joystick, flight stick part of my Hotas. That's my rudder axis. I think it's there by default. If not, that's what I've got it set to. And I've got reverse axis ticked, and I think that's done by default. If you're getting strange behavior, maybe copy this. Tick the reverse axis in your twist, your rudder movement on your joystick. Elevator up or down, that's just normal, no reverse axis. Ailerons, again I've got reverse axis ticked, I think it was by default. That's my left and right movement on my stick, on my flight stick, my joystick basically. So if you're getting any strange behaviours, maybe take a look at this and copy the settings I've got there. The thing I want to show you here are control trimming surfaces. Now I've got my elevator trim nose up to B2, and my trim nose down to B1. I'll show you where B2 is. It's next to your strike button on the back of your flight stick. That's my trim nose up. And B1 is on the other side of your flight stick next to your trigger button. I'll show you where that is. That's my trim nose down. Now, the reason I set these buttons for trimming is that I didn't get on with the rocker switch on the front of the throttle there. I'll show you a picture of that on screen. I didn't get on with that. It was too fiddly and I could hardly trim my aircraft whilst in flight. So I changed it to the buttons I just showed you. B1 and B2. They just work magically, and I'll show you in a minute a test flight. I'll display this and give you an example of how well these do work. So I'll leave that on screen in case you want to copy it. So basically B1 and B2, the buttons I just showed you, I've got set to trim. Now secondary flight control, my flaps, I think I've left these as default B3 and B4. Decrease flaps is B3 and increase is B4. I'll show you a picture of where they are. They're on the front part of your throttle quadrant on the Hotas. So as you can see there, B4 increases and B3 decreases, and that just works well. Okay, let's move on to brakes. Toggle parking brakes. I've changed this. I've put it to the Y button. I'll show you where that is. It's on the back of your throttle quadrant again. And I've got that. I find that best for me. I've just used that as toggle parking brakes. Not sure where these came from. If they were already there, I don't remember them being there from my last setup. I think these have appeared since this sim update 6. And the troubling part is I can't find axis 6 and 7. If I go to my sensitivities, there's no axis 6 or 7. Maybe I'm overlooking something there, but it's basically saying my left and right brake axis is now 6 and 7. You know what, I'm going to leave it up to you viewers. If you know what that is, let me know, because I can't be bothered looking it up. I'm not going to use it on my Hotas anyway. My brakes I've got set to my trigger button on my flight stick. Right on the front of the flight stick, the trigger button. Sure you all know where that is, but I'll show you a picture. That's set up as my brakes when I want to brake. If I'm landing and I want to brake, that's what I use. Don't need to go through power management. That's just my throttle. So that's your throttle quadrant. That should be there by default. Landing gear I've got set to my next button. So I'll show you where that is. I just found that best for landing gear. In fact, I have missed one there. Instruments, engine instruments, auto start. I think that's set by default to X. And the only other thing I missed there, if I go into camera mode switches, I've got the previous button. I'll show you where that is. It's on the sort of bottom center of your Hotas. I've got that set to toggle cockpit and external view. So when I press that, I toggle between cockpit and external view. So listen, that's all my switches, all my current mappings, and these just work well for me. I've been using them in my last few live streams, and they've worked really well for me. So what I'm going to do now, I'll go back to the home page, go to world map. I'll go to my testbed, London City Airport, and show you these settings I've got, including the sensitivities that I quickly set up. I'll give you a demonstration of how these work. So we're set off from London City Airport. Come on, toggle over it. London City Airport, set as departure. As you can see, it's past 8 o'clock now in the UK. I've not long since patched to the latest update. So even though you'll probably be seeing this video in the morning, I may release it tonight, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to take the time zone back a bit. And let's go fly in the Cessna 172. Fly. Okay, so I'm set up at runway 27 at London City Airport, my typical testbed. Let me just give you a demonstration of the buttons that I showed you before. Press my previous button. I'll show you where that is again, just as a reminder. Press that. I go to my external view. Use my hat switch. I can look around the aircraft. I can pan around freely, as you can see there, using the hat switch. And that's from the video I linked previous. In this video, go and take a look at that if you haven't already. I'm going to press my previous button again. Into the cockpit I go. Hat switch left and right, obviously quick view left and right. That's the way I prefer it. I use that on my yoke system as well. Just the way I prefer. Move my hat switch down. I'm in my instruments. I can go left and right to cycle, especially handy in the Cessna 172, between the two different G1000s. If I had a mouse attached, I don't at the moment, but if I had a mouse attached, which I normally do, I'll be messing around with the map screen there, setting up autopilot, ILS or whatever, and on this I can set up my autopilot altitude and autopilot buttons, and goodness knows what, move my hat switch up, I'm back up at my default cockpit view. Okay, I've got live weather on. It's quite windy today over the southeast. Just be pre-warned. I'm going to use my throttle on my Hotas to throttle up. Press my Y button. I'll show you where that is again. Press that to release the parking brakes. Even with those quick and easy sensitivity settings I showed you before, on the rudder, minus 30 in both the axis, or both the minus and plus sensitivities, it works well on the ground and in the air as well. I'm at takeoff speed. I'm going to pull back on my joystick, flight stick. I'm going to use my B2 button, I'll show you where that is again, to trim nose up so I can relieve pressure on my joystick, flight stick. Just going to use my B1 button to trim nose down so I can get myself in a good trimming position where I'm climbing slightly. I don't want to descend too much at this point. I want to climb slightly, so I'm using my B1 and B2 just to set my trim there. And it works a lot better than using the rocker switch, I find, on the front of your throttle quadrant. The wind just blew me around there, so just bear with me. This could be an interesting flight, which is why I chose live weather. Because it's showing you, with those settings, I can still hopefully control my aircraft fairly well. Although, oof, getting a nasty wind there. It's blowing me both left and right. That's okay, I'm still in control. I won't draw this out too much. Actually, I can still go down to my cockpit view with my hat switching over the nose if I want to. I've been blown up a bit there, so I'm going to trim down a little bit. Oh, you can see how that wind's just not the day to go flying at all, but perhaps it's a good test flight, like I've mentioned. So what I'll do here, in fact, is actually turn back towards London City. Try and do a control bank here. Turn a 180. Try and maintain my altitude as well. So let's turn, control that. Oh, that wind, look at the wind. Didn't say it was going to be easy. The airport's dead ahead of us, so I'm going to have to throttle back all the way here, almost. Not quite, but little throttle engaged there, just to bring my speed right down, which is coming so I can go to flaps 1. Control my trim there. I trimmed too much. The wind is not making this easy. Stage 2 flaps already. As I'm so close to the airport, I'm going to have to come down there in altitude, because I'm way above the glide slope. Sorry, the PAPI lights rather. Not using glide slope at all at the moment, but I'm way above the PAPI lights. 4 whites saying I'm too high. Let's try and line back up if I can. Wind dependent on the runway here. And when we're coming into land, now this is kind of like an emergency landing. Somewhat. Gone full flaps there just to control my speed as well. Bit of an emergency landing, but when I'm over the runway, I'll show you, even with those sensitivity settings that I quickly set up, it just works well. It works. There you go. PAPI lights are back to where they should be now. It's worked well on my live stream, and hopefully, let's get back to center line here. Null my throttle, and just float over that runway to really bring that speed down, so I can do a smooth landing like that. Use my rudder to get back to center line and brake with my trigger button. No issues. It's just a very comfortable way to fly with those settings, and even with those quick and dirty sensitivities. Set my parking brake, get outside. Listen, it's not the complete news we wanted. I'm disappointed that the sensitivities are still not patched in. Don't tell me, Asobo, that we're going to have to wait another few months for those sensitivities to be patched in. Come on, it's a big seller on the Xbox's flight simulators. Very popular. The Hotas One is a big seller. What's going on? Great that we have the buttons and they're all mapped correctly. Makes it a lot easier in that sense. Why have sensitivities been left out? Unbelievable. I'm frustrated. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. Don't blame me, it's not my fault. Put the blame on Asobo. Anyway, with 50% there. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe for many more Flight Simulator videos on the way. And I'll see you soon.